أيها الصهيون واسمعوا وانظروا أيها الكفار والمشركين، هذا من فضل ربي، هذا جيش الإمام الخامنئي، هذا جيش الغائب.
A missile is sitting in an underground silo somewhere in central Iran right now. It has been sitting there for years, fueled, sealed, and ready, and the people whose job it is to stop it have spent the better part of 2 decades trying to solve a problem that keeps getting harder. Because this missile does not behave the way missiles are supposed to behave, it does not need hours of preparation. It does not telegraph its launch. And once it leaves the ground, the window to stop it narrows so fast that the math stops working in the defender's favor before the interceptor even leaves its tube. This is the Sejjil, and understanding exactly how it works tells you more about the future of this conflict than any diplomatic statement issued in the last 6 months. To understand why the Sejjil matters, you need to understand what came before it. Iran spent decades building its missile program around liquid fuel technology. Liquid fuel missiles are capable. They can carry heavy payloads across long distances, but they have a fundamental vulnerability baked into their design. Liquid fuel has to be loaded before launch. That process takes time, sometimes hours. And in a world of surveillance satellites, reconnaissance drones, and signals intelligence, time is the one thing a military force cannot afford to give its enemy. A missile sitting on a pad being fueled is a missile that can be seen, tracked, and struck before it ever leaves the ground. Iran understood this problem and spent years solving it. The Sejjil is that solution. Sejjil means baked clay in Persian, a reference to stones hurled from the sky in ancient Islamic scripture. The name was chosen deliberately. Nothing about this program is accidental. What makes the Sejjil categorically different from what came before it is its propulsion system. This is a solid fuel missile. The propellant is preloaded into the motor casing during manufacturing and stays there, sealed, stable, and ready for years without maintenance. There is no fueling process on launch day. The transporter drives to the firing position. The missile elevates and it is airborne in under 10 minutes. By the time a satellite pass confirms a launch is underway, the missile is already climbing through the atmosphere at speeds that compress every defensive timeline into something almost unworkable. The missile carries a range of approximately 2,000 kilometers. That number places every significant target in Israel well within reach from launch sites deep inside Iranian territory, sites that are themselves hardened, dispersed, and in many cases underground. Israel's air bases, its port infrastructure, its power generation facilities, its population centers, all of it sits inside the Sejjil's operational envelope without the launcher ever needing to move close to a border, but range is the least interesting thing about this weapon. The Sejjil is a 2-stage ballistic missile, which means it burns through 2 separate motors in sequence during its climb. The first stage accelerates the missile out of the lower atmosphere. The second stage carries it the rest of the way through the upper atmosphere and into the trajectory arc that brings the warhead back down. That 2-stage design allows the missile to carry a significant payload. Estimates place the warhead capacity somewhere between 500 and 1,000 kilograms, while still achieving the kind of range that makes geographic distance irrelevant. During the descent phase, the warhead section separates from the spent booster, and this is where the defensive problem becomes acute. The warhead is not following a clean, predictable arc. It is maneuvering. Small adjustments made during the terminal phase of flight alter the trajectory enough that an interceptor locked onto a calculated impact point suddenly finds itself chasing a moving answer to an equation it solved for the wrong variable. Interception probability on a standard ballistic trajectory might sit around 80 to 85% under good conditions. Against a maneuvering warhead under real combat pressure, with radar networks processing multiple simultaneous threats, that number drops. It drops fast. And every percentage point it drops represents a real possibility that the warhead completes its flight. Israel's primary tool for stopping missiles of this class is the Arrow system, specifically Arrow 3, which is designed to intercept ballistic threats during the exo-atmospheric phase, high above the atmosphere, before the warhead begins its terminal descent. Arrow 3 is genuinely sophisticated. It has made successful intercepts. On paper, it is exactly the kind of system that should be able to handle a threat like the Sejjil. The problem is not the technology. The problem is the arithmetic. Arrow interceptors cost somewhere between $2 and $3 million each. A single intercept attempt against a high-value ballistic threat often involves firing 2 interceptors in sequence, because no one accepts an 80% solution when the alternative is a warhead landing on an airbase. That means each Sejjil intercept attempt consumes $4 to $6 million worth of interceptor inventory, minimum. Iran can manufacture a Sejjil for a fraction of that cost. The production economics run entirely in Iran's direction. And there is a deeper problem underneath the cost ratio. Israel's interceptor stockpile is finite. It is not a number that gets discussed publicly, but every analysis of the Aero system acknowledges that sustained high-tempo operations deplete inventory faster than manufacturing can replace it. Interceptor production is measured in months per unit. A conflict that runs for weeks can consume stockpiles that took years to accumulate. Iran's solid fuel production infrastructure, meanwhile, has been expanding. The gap between how fast Israel can replace interceptors and how fast Iran can produce missiles has not been closing. There is a dimension to the Sejjil that the technical specifications do not capture, and it matters as much as anything in the engineering. Iran has not fired its Sejjil stockpile in large numbers yet. The missiles that have been used in exchanges so far have drawn from other parts of Iran's arsenal. The Sejjil has been held back, and the deliberate restraint around a specific weapon system in the middle of an active conflict is not a coincidence. It is a signal. It is Iran communicating that there is a tier of capability that has not yet been introduced into the exchange, a reserve being maintained for a moment when the calculus demands it. Military planners on the other side of that signal understand exactly what it means. You do not hold back your most capable system because you are losing. You hold it back because you intend to use it at the moment of maximum impact. Here's what this means for anyone watching this conflict from a distance and wondering when it reaches them. The Sejjil is not a weapon that changes one battle. It is a weapon that changes the ceiling on what this conflict can become. Every escalation ladder has a next rung. The introduction of the Sejjil at scale would represent a rung that Israeli defenses have never had to absorb in sustained volume, not because they cannot intercept individual missiles, but because no defense system ever built can absorb unlimited salvos of maneuvering warheads without eventually running out of the tools to stop them. And the economic consequences of what that ceiling represents are already being priced into global markets. Oil above $100 a barrel is partly a reflection of the military situation. It is also partly a reflection of what traders and analysts believe the military situation could become. The Sejjil is part of what they are pricing in. A missile sitting in a silo does not have to be fired to change the world. Sometimes the most consequential thing a weapon does is simply exist and make every decision made in its shadow more careful, more costly, and more constrained than it would have been otherwise. That missile is still sitting there, and the people whose job it is to stop it are still running the math. The math is not getting easier.